I was in an abusive situation. I was told about narcissism. I was told about abuse. I was told to leave. It was the safety that I found in myself first, where I started to see things clearly.
We are women who discover.
So today I have my friend Sariah Bastian. I've known her for several years now. We've collaborated here and there on social media. And I got to tell you, she has a message that is so powerful, so important, and potentially a missing piece to your healing from betrayal. And so I just really wanted her to come into this space, share it with us, and give her an opportunity to download that wisdom. Sariah works with the body and has for years and years. So she's not coming from the traditional therapeutic or psychological standpoint. She's coming from a body work place. And although she understands the psychology behind it and is living testimony of how it works, she's got a wealth of experience to really kind of download into simple form what it is that we can do to help release trauma from the body. So let me tell you a little more about her. She's a passionate advocate for transformative healing and empowerment, over a decade of experience in the field of holistic wellness. She's the creator of the Beyond Breath program. You may have heard of it. She's got a huge following over on Instagram, where she posts videos on the daily that are awesome. And just kind of, the type of content that you get where you're saying, oh yeah, I know what that's like. Some of it is lighthearted levity, and I so appreciate that about your content, Sariah. She's got teachings, workshops, and coaching. I'll tell you more about that at the end. But for now, Sariah, welcome.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. So, Sariah, one of the things that I think you really bring full force awareness to, and just an ability to understand this better for people who are going through the trauma of betrayal from infidelity, is that their body houses this stuff. This isn't just something we have to heal in the mind or the heart. There's a bodily aspect to this. And I want to ask you about that mind and body connection. Can you explain how processed trauma can manifest physically and emotionally?
Yeah, I think what you just said was like, it's not just the mind and the heart, right? The mind is a huge piece of it. In that, after infidelity, the thoughts, my gosh, the replays, the conversations, the words just cycle, right? And when we have that cycling happening, our brain is absorbing that. The heart rate rises, the stomach churns, the pit in the stomach, the legs shake, you sweat. All of the exhaustion, the tightness, the white knuckling, the effort that's put into just maintaining a level of survival within the body, which causes exhaustion. Now, the thing is that that's a one-way street, from brain to nervous system to body. But through the body's response of the sweat, the heart rate rise, the pit in the stomach, it sends a message back through the nervous system to the brain saying, I'm in danger. Keep it going. Keep those thoughts coming. Keep telling me that I'm not safe. And then the mind continues to feed that through, right? And so it becomes what I define the trauma highway, where you start to operate fully, mind, body, breath, everything becomes functionable in a level of trauma. And you live here. When I say you, I mean like this is like maybe too spiritual, but this is what I work with. Like, you live in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes unsafe to be even present in it. It's uncomfortable. You don't understand it. You don't recognize it. You don't like it, right? You question your body on the level of, am I good enough? You compare your body to the other woman. and your body almost becomes the enemy in this. And so when we talk about healing trauma, and I don't even know what your question was anymore, I just started talking about trauma, but when we talk about healing this trauma in the body, it truly is a befriending. But before we can even get there, we have to clear the trauma of the body. We have to get off the trauma highway, take the exit, so as to not allow the continual cycle to happen. And then we can create a new relationship with our body that is one of safety and security and trustworthiness and love within ourselves. Did I answer your question?
You betcha. From the depth and breadth of your wise soul, this is the work you do every day, with folks, and you are really expert at helping them not only be able to understand this, but access this place within themselves so they can move and work trauma out of their bodies. I just love what you bring as far as your message is, because like I said, I think, for many people, this is a missing piece. They've got a lot of therapy, psychological work being done, emotional support. They're doing all the mindset shifts, setting all the boundaries, doing the things that, we, have within our control mentally and psychologically, emotionally. But there's this house we live in that you call the body, the idea of the trauma highway that's kind of just going on inside it. That's such a powerful picture because I picture fast racing cars, and when we have those excitatory chemicals surging through our body all the time, it really causes our baseline to raise, right? There's a clenching. If there's any areas of weakness within the body or strain in the body or disease in the body, we're clenching, we're emotionally charged and in survival mode. And we are also, holding that trauma and the depth of those emotions, the excitatory chemical surges. They don't just go somewhere. Now I've heard it takes for adrenaline to kind of come out of our system. It can take a couple days, depending on how big the surge was and how related to a fear response it was. And so when you think about being triggered on a multiple daily basis as a partner, how many of those adrenaline surges, those just huge waves of fear or shock or needing to protect yourself, when that comes online multiple times a day, you can imagine how your baseline just kind of calibrates up to a new level. And we become accustomed to this, right? So what is it that you do, Sariah, that helps people take the exit off of this highway? Can you put that simply somehow?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just a one word thing, right? But the first part of this is awareness. Now, you just talked about like psychologically the things that we can control, like setting the boundaries, right? The mindset shifts, like all the things that we can try to fight with. And that I truly believe that has a benefit. But also when we're operating in this place of where our capacity is hypervigilance, heightened anxiety, when we are setting boundaries, and boundaries has a fluid term, right, where they can mean different things. But when some of my clients have come to me and their boundaries have been set as far as like, okay, this is what he needs to do in order to make you feel safe. You need to ensure that he's following through with this list of things. And it keeps them in that state of hypervigilance to where they're practicing the continual skill of hypervigilance, where it doesn't help them in any way, shape, or form to move beyond the trauma, but it just embeds more deeply into their body the operating mode of anxiety, of panic, to where that becomes truly like, this is how our body operates, is it it becomes who you are, in that trauma takes over your body. That is, like, I was just on a call the other day with a woman who is, saying that, she remarried and she questioned her husband from the beginning, and she didn't trust herself from the beginning. And that's a skill that you build, just like trusting yourself is a skill that you have to build. Finding safety in yourself is a skill you have to build, right? And so a lot of the work, when we talk about, like, how do I get them off the trauma highway, I think the hardest shift for most of the women is turning the mirror from pointing at them, at their husband, at him being the one to blame, him being the one that has to fix this, him being the one that's responsible for her healing, and turning the mirror to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because what's going on inside of you isn't anything that he can do to fix. And it doesn't sound fair, because you didn't ask for this, because this, isn't anything you would wish on your worst enemy. But this isn't anything else anybody else can do. And so it truly just, I say, like, I'm just going to hold the mirror up to you. So you have to see yourself so in depth and so clearly, and become so aware of exactly what it is that you are working with in complete honesty.
Yeah.
Because healing begins with truth. And so exiting the trauma highway, the first step of that is recognizing that you're even on it. Mm-hmm. We have to start exactly where we are. We can't start in the future with what we want. We can't start by bringing the past with us and the what ifs and the fears of what might happen if we do this work. It is right here. What are you working with? Where's your mind? Where's your body? Where's your breath? And recognizing when you create, like, a baseline, and that's something that we work on initially, is that baseline of safety, and recognizing when you're here, and then when you're not here, and then when you're here, and then when you're not here, right? And when you're not here, recognizing that you're not here, and then practicing and building the skill set of embedding safety, trust, confidence, empowerment here in your body, right? So it just, just generally, that's the simplest way, is that first step is X marks the spot, starting right here where you are, right? With the pain that you're in, with the nightmare that you're living, with the chaos that is, and truly accepting it, which is so hard. And then starting from here and moving forward.
Do you have folks, when they're really working to track with you and say, okay, but I'm stuck, I don't know how to do what it is you're saying, what do you tell them?
Well, and that's the hard part, right? Like, it's not just a one word answer. That word stuck is where we're paralyzed in the trauma highway, where we're running on the hamster wheel, where we've bashed our head against the wall, where we've had a million conversations with our husband, where we've read every book Amazon has to offer on betrayal trauma and infidelity and addiction and all the knowledge and the wisdom, and you feel stuck. And one of my core beliefs is that your healing is always in your hands, and that your healing is not I don't know why I'm losing my words here, but, like, regardless of what's going on around you, you can continue to heal by accepting this moment. There is always something within you that can that you can learn from, that you can grow from, that you can do differently in this moment than maybe you've done in the past. And so it's like that feeling of stuck is a feeling of powerlessness, where I truly believe, and again, that's one of the major things, is like accepting this. And sometimes, like, you feel stuck, and the only thing you can do right now is breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of you staying in the spiral of, I'm stuck, what do I do? That chaos, oh my gosh, this is never going to go anywhere. My marriage is failing. What am I doing? I'm wasting my time. You know, the confusion that comes from that. Like, instead of going there, just breathing, right? And turning that, at any moment, there's always something you can do within yourself to continue that healing. So that word stuck, I don't believe in it. I know it happens. I know it's a real thing. I felt it myself. But the healing that I have taken and found for myself began when I started taking responsibility for my own life, where I didn't allow my external environment to control me, where I found that sincere control within myself. And if it was just that one shift of, okay, where's your breath? Okay, where's your feet? That was the starting point over and over again for me, because that gave me a ground to stand on. That reminded me that I have more power than I think I do, because I'm not in the chains or in the jail cell that we feel like I'm in, when we feel stuck in that. Like, I have the freedom to move my body. And that's also like part of that sympathetic nervous system, is that fight, flight, freeze, right? And that freeze that we have, which is that stuck feeling, where our emotions are stuck, where we're so confused, where we're lost in our thoughts, where we're, living in our head space, and we lack movement in our body, we lack breath in our body. And that's life. Mm-hmm. Right? Again, like, this is where we live.
You're really speaking a lot of truth from a pretty elevated level of consciousness. So this is stuff that people could really balk at. I just want to point out a few devil's advocate pieces, because I want people to be able to embrace this truth that you're talking about. It's not ableist to say that you have your body. If you're alive, no matter what condition or how differently abled you might be, if you're alive, and you have enough agency in your mind, meaning that you're not on a ventilator or in a coma, you do have the ability to do things with either your breathing or your noticing or observing of your body. So it's not ableist what you're saying. It's also not a privileged thing. Let's talk about that for a minute. The idea that I'm safe enough that I can sit back and just think about my breathing and, just be in this moment and be safe. You're actually not saying that. I know that you're not, because I know you and I know your message. The idea is that we're safe in the moment. There's one thing, like Viktor Frankl said, that nobody could ever take away from him, which was his own ability to think about things the way he wanted to. Mm-hmm. He was never safe when he was enduring the atrocities of a death camp. And he was in a place where he said, but there's still one thing I still have power over that nobody else does. And that's what you're talking about here. We're not talking about people who are in safe situations necessarily. So we do need to talk about safety. However, for instance, if there's active physical or emotional or psychological abuse or restraining going on of any sort, assault or aggression, verbally, physically, or just having your reality withheld from you, or being subjected to sexually transmitted infections outside of your awareness, whatever kinds of abuse of power and control may be occurring, that wouldn't mean you're safe. But it also doesn't mean you don't have access to do the things that Sariah is talking about here. So I just wanted to make sure that we could play the devil's advocate, because your message is pretty powerful. It's you really have to think it through. And I think in order to think it through, which you've done for years, that's why you know how to just kind of talk about it so freely. But when you think it through, you run into some of these barriers, well, what about these people? What about those people? What about me when I'm in this situation? I can't do what you're saying, Sariah.
Mm-hmm.
So how can people do this? They have to start where they're at, right?
Right, but I also like that word safe. Like that's a word that's kind of thrown around. Like we want to feel safe in our relationships, and a lot of the women that I'm working with, like they want to feel safe in their relationship before they feel safe enough to move towards their husband. We look at Viktor Frankl, who wasn't safe outside of himself, but he found safety within himself, and that's the safety that I'm offering. Is that and again, like with a manipulation, gaslight, right, which happens a lot in this situation. That like you said, like STDs, right, all the things where we consider like safe and a safe environment. What my idea of safe is that and you build that skill to know that no matter what happens, you are going to be okay. And that safety is key, if you will. Like that to me is a cornerstone of any healing, because unless you have that within yourself, you do feel stuck. So when you think about like safety and the idea of like moving forward into your relationship, you want to feel safe before you move forward into your relationship. When you don't feel safe within yourself, even if your environment is offering that safety, you're going to question it. You're not going to want to move forward because you still don't feel safe. And that's that internal operating that I'm speaking of, like from the way that your body is functioning from your sensory input, from what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Everything is skewed when you are in this situation. When we talk about your body going into fight or flight, one of the things that happens is your pupils dilate so that your vision is blurry. And if we just think about that on a physical standpoint, right? When you go to the eye doctor and that happens, where you can't see, when this is where you're operating, even if you're being offered safety outside of you, you don't trust it if your body is operating on that level. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So yes, I hear like, but he could have multiple partners. He's bringing home diseases. You're staying in an abusive situation. But for me, in my experience, I was in an abusive situation. I was told about narcissism. I was told about abuse. I was told to leave. And I like understood that, but that information almost scared me more because I didn't know how to get out of that. I didn't know. I was afraid I was going to get in trouble. I was afraid I was going to disappoint. I was afraid I was going to get yelled at. I was afraid I was going to get locked out of the house. And so it was the safety that I found in myself first, where I started to see things clearly, that gave me the know-how and the knowledge to walk away from that, to know that no matter what happened, if he did lock me out, I was going to be okay because I was safe within myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want, I guess my intention in saying it that way is like what we do think about, like, and what automatically comes to mind is like, but I'm not safe, but I'm not safe, but I'm not safe. And we're so dependent on the outer world to provide that safety for us. And what I'm offering is deep, and that there is a way for you to find that safety within yourself. And for me, that was my lifeline. And my story is quite complex, right? But I remember my ex-husband I was married to, he's 6'5", very big man, muscly. And he would never touch me with his hands, but he would constantly push me against the wall with his nose on my nose, and back me into a wall. And he would yell at me and say, why don't you go grab the knife, Sariah, and do something about it? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this, right? Why don't you hit me? And I was constantly berated. I was constantly put on question. I was constantly proving myself for years. And I had become a shell of the woman that I used to be. I'd lost myself completely. And while I was doing my yoga therapy training, so I'd been a yoga teacher for years, and so I knew how to move my body, but I dove into yoga therapy, and what we learned about was the way that but your body holds to emotion, the emotional levels, the energetic levels of emotion, the way that your body is affected by pent up, stored emotion, trauma, how it affects your body. And it wasn't specific to infidelity, but it was information for me to start to use. So nobody was telling me specifically anything outside of myself. Like I'd read the books, I'd done therapy for years. But there was this one moment that I can recall so vividly, because this is the moment that I stepped into myself for the first time in years. I was backed against the wall, his nose on my nose. He was yelling at me. And something deep within me said, Sariah, feel your feet on the ground. And I did. And I remember feeling the sensation of my feet on the ground beneath me and the texture of the carpet. And here I am being yelled at outside of myself, not safe. And I felt my feet on the ground. And then something said, Sariah, breathe. And I just remember I took a breath in and I took a breath out. And then that same voice said, Sariah, look. And I saw, oh, his nose is on my nose. Oh, there's a hole in the wall where his phone was just thrown. Oh, the ottoman is kicked over. Oh, interesting. And I found that safety. This was the first step for me to find that safety within myself, to start to come back into me, to see my reality, to recognize that I wasn't safe, but I had safety here. Mm-hmm. And that is that safety that I speak of. Because without that, I would still be in that situation. Even after therapy, even after talking about my week, and even after my therapist suggesting this is not a healthy relationship, I couldn't see that when I was in the status that I was within my body. Does that make sense?
Thank you for sharing that part of your story with us. It's so powerful. And, you know, it illuminates this idea that you were talking about this whole time, that we don't have to have external safety to find safety within ourselves. And the safety that we connect to within ourselves isn't meant to give us reprieve from the external world so that we can continue in unsafe circumstances. It's not meant to say, hey, let's get safe in here so we can block everything out and remain in places that we shouldn't be remaining, or not address things that should not be left unaddressed. You're not asking anybody to desensitize themselves, but to resensitize themselves to their body. And that's just so beautiful. I want to leave it there, because there's not much more power than the power of story in a situation like that. And I just want to thank you for sharing this with the world. I know that the people who are ready for this next level will come and find you in your program. This is something you really want to think about, because, you know, those of you listening, if you find anything that Sariah is saying to be intriguing, but it gives you pause or questions, and I encourage you to walk those through, because I think that in potentially dusting off or just, you know, kind of dropping by this conversation without giving it a thorough look as to what it is that you could do with your body and your breath to increase your safety, then you might be missing out on an opportunity that's going to make a difference for you. So I'm so grateful for you, my friend. Thank you
Thank
for being here. And if you guys want to go over to Sariah's website, it's sariahbastian.com. I'm going to spell that for you, SariahBastian, and that's in the show notes. And there you can find her amazing course, her Beyond Breath course, which is her signature program she's been running for a long time now. She also coaches, and there's a free mini course if you want to go over there, marriageafterinfidelity.com. You're going to find the free mini course that is going to just kind of take you a little bit deeper into the idea of releasing trauma, rebuilding trust. So that's a really great way to spend some time for free. I just am excited for people to also come and find you on Instagram at Sariah.Bastian.
Mm-hmm.
On Instagram. So if you follow me on Instagram, I follow Sariah, and you could find her that way too if you forget how to spell things. But it's pretty nice. I'm looking at your name right now. You have a IAH and an IAN at the end of your first and last name. It's very synergistic. Love it. Okay, well, thanks for being with us, and
Thank you.
we'll see you next time, okay?
Yes, thank you, Hope.